against your race. Does that happen on the left sometimes? Yes. All right, let's go to members on our website. No good name ideas, Dragon writes in. Anna, you're super...
Copies in mine. Here's what it says.
14 says, hatred is taught. His parents knew its kid was headed. Grumpy Dragon writes in.
Hello, everyone. All right, I'm going to be playing. I made 2 videos. Hello, everyone. I'm going to play the context of what the 2 videos were about. This is Vivek Ramaswamy. You get to it. Giving you context for those videos that he took out of context. Excuse me.
Swami GOP candidate. Let's get to the first story on that.
They lynched people, they murdered people, they raped people, they burned their homes.
And that was wrong.
Simply
that was
because
obviously wrong. Wrong.
Okay, so again,
that is obviously a
if
wrong
you want to have an intellectual
Absolutely.
discussion, do you think that maybe comparing her to the Grand Wizard and the notion of what she said to being a modern leader of the KKK was
not funny.
A step too far?
Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy sparred with CNN's Dana Bash over the weekend following his provocative comments about racism during a town hall event in Iowa. Now, before we get to more of his interaction with Dana Bash, I think it's worth getting into what the comments were and the type of backlash he has received since then. Let's begin with what he said during that town hall in Iowa.
Ayanna Pressley, she's in the Congress today. She's a member of the squad. Her words, not mine. We don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. Literally word for word. I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. Ibram Kendi wrote the book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. I wrote Woking. It was a pretty successful book. His sold more copies than mine. Here's what it says. Opening lines. The remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So the other side will gaslight you when you say this stuff. It's like, oh, you're just making that critical race theory stuff up. No. These aren't my words. These are the words of the modern grand wizards of the modern KKK.
So obviously the last few sentences comparing these 2 individuals to modern day KKK is what led to a lot of backlash, and we should address that. I disagree with that kind of statement. I think he was intentionally provocative in order to...
Which is why I made my intentional comments about the Grand Wizard and the Al-Qaeda, him being Al-Qaeda. But
experience the news cycle that he experienced over the weekend. However, we did go in and fact check his allegations against Representative Pressley and Ibram X. Kendi, and he is correct in regard to what they have said on the record. Let's start with Congresswoman Pressley speaking at Netroots Nation in July of 2019.
If you are not prepared to come to that table and to represent that voice, don't come. Because we don't need any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. We don't need black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't need Muslims that don't want to be a Muslim voice. We don't need queers that don't want to be a queer voice. And if you're worried about being marginalized and stereotyped, please don't even show up. Because we need you to represent that voice.
And in regard to Ibram X. Kendi, in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist, here are the excerpts that Ramaswamy was referring to. Kendi wrote, quote, "The only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination." And then he continues, as U.S. Supreme Court Justice Harry Blackmun wrote in 1978, "In order to get beyond racism, we must first take account of race. There is no other way, and in order to treat some persons equally, we must treat them differently." So,
all things that are true. Because if you never address, correct, atone for racism, racism will continue to exist. So for this little bastard to stand there and say racism doesn't exist, it's just a mental disorder, is doing exactly what the people just said. Racism is not a mental disorder. This is what Presley Ibram and the judge is saying.
I actually do have a problem with those statements, and I think that it leads to more division and racial tension in the country. However, I do not agree with what he had to say about the so-called modern-day KKK. Again, I think he was intentionally being provocative to get attention, and I guess mission accomplished.
Yeah, I think.
And so
These Republicans.
And so, therefore, because her little white ass, she's Jewish or whatever she is, he's Turkish. So when you have people who have not experienced racism, they do have blinders on. And they do say, oh, well, you know, there's really no racism anymore. Because they haven't experienced it. You haven't lived it. You've not gone through it. You've not experienced it. So you can easily say, but I was born and I went through high school, grammar, kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school, college. And yeah, some people may have called some people names, but I lived my entire life and now I'm in my 30s and I didn't experience any racism in America. And people are not applying themselves. Racism doesn't exist like it did before. You got black people that'll tell you that. Because they haven't experienced it. So how can somebody be the president of the country if they do not understand that it still exists because it is institutionalized, that it still exists because it is based on the color and the hue of someone who is black skin? A black Muslim is treated differently than a Muslim who has a hue of a Turkish person like this. A black person with the color of my skin is treated differently than a black light-skinned person. All right, I gotta go. But that's what my video was about. Excuse me. I'll take this out of the video. This country is geared to eliminate black people with dark skin like mine. They want to get rid of the dark skin. And in the last video that I made, when I said Vice President Kamala Harris is not a black person like me, and there are people who want to eliminate people with dark skin like myself, and that there's going to be a civil war because there are people who are trying to preserve their non-melanated skin. And people like him and people like Anna are going to, I'm not even going to go into it, but Ramaswamy is now almost a billionaire. And they're going to be replacing people. Y'all don't have to listen to me. But I tell you what, I got 405 subscribers on my channel. I know less than 10 people. But there are 160,000 people that have viewed my channel. So somebody's listening to me. And I promise you, this man is Al-Qaeda material. I promise you he is. the way he speaks, the anger when he speaks. He constantly smiles, but he's very, very angry. All right. Have a nice night.